Our gospel for this morning comes from the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke, the 7th chapter. After Jesus had finished all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. A centurion there had a slave whom he valued highly, and who was ill and close to death. When he heard about Jesus, he sent some Jewish elders to him, asking him to come and heal his slave. When they came to Jesus, they appealed to him earnestly, saying, "He is worthy of having you do this for him, for he loves our people, and it is he who built our synagogue for us." And Jesus went with them, and when he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to say to him, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore I did not presume to come to you. But only speak the word, and let my servant be healed. For I also am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes. And to my slave, do this, and the slave does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him, and turning to the crowd that followed him, he said, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith." When those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the slave in good health. This is the gospel of the Lord. So this, of course, is Memorial Weekend, and tomorrow is Memorial Day. And it's during this weekend, and especially tomorrow, when we take time to remember those military personnel that gave their life in defense of this country. And it's also a time to remember veterans who also have passed on after their service has been completed, and a time to remember other loved ones that have passed on as well. So people will be gathering at cemeteries to decorate them, to bring flowers and other items. Tomorrow, people will be gathering for Memorial Day services, and I can remember as a kid, as a Boy Scout, participating in those services. And my dad, who's a pastor, would often speak and preach at those services as well. So as we remember those veterans that have given their life for this country, why don't we take another moment of silence now? So I've been thinking about different military personnel that I have known in my life, and specifically those that have passed on. And one person in particular came to mind. He was a hero of mine growing up as a kid. He lived in my hometown of Buffalo. And his name is Harry. And Harry was the most amazing guy you have ever met in your life. And he was a rather unassuming gentleman. He looked a lot like my Grandpa Carl. He always wore bib overalls, or as he called them, bib overhauls. And he always had a trucker hat on and a little bit of a paunch as well. And he was the best friend of my best friend's dad. And I got to hang out with him quite a bit growing up. My friend was Hans, and so Hans and I would just sit at Harry's feet and listen to him tell his stories. He started out his life in a rather mundane way. He was a plumber. Now, as a former plumber myself, I think that's a great way to start out life as a plumber. You're bound to do great things, right, if you start out life as a plumber. So then World War II came round, and Harry enlisted into the Army Air Corps. At that time, the Air Force hadn't started yet. That wouldn't be until 1947. So he was in the Army Air Corps, and he became a P-51 Mustang pilot. And he had a very specific mission. He flew aerial reconnaissance. So it was his job to fly over all places in Europe and take pictures of possible targets for the bombers to come, so the bombardiers knew what the target looked like. And it was a rather dangerous job, and he had all sorts of stories. And it was really hard to believe that this guy who didn't look like a fighter pilot did these unexpected things. He just never would have expected Harry to do these incredible things. So he did that all throughout World War II. And he told of one hair-raising mission when he was returning after one of these missions, and he noticed a German plane engaging an air transport aircraft, maybe a C-47 of some kind. And he had completed his photography mission, and he engaged that German aircraft and shot it down. He came to find out like a week later, it was kept kind of quiet according to him, that Field Marshal Montgomery was in that plane. Harry had saved the life of Field Marshal Montgomery, who was this high-ranking British military leader, kind of on the same level as General Eisenhower. Absolutely incredible. This guy I'm sitting across saved Field Marshal Montgomery's life. Then he went to fly in Korea as well, and somewhere along the line he had to bail out of an aircraft, and he received one of the first knee replacements ever given. And so he kind of hobbled around, but he liked to make jokes about his titanium knees. But it doesn't end there. Then he got a call from the CIA to fly the A-12 Oxcart, which is the one-seat version, the predecessor of the SR-71 Blackbird. Now, this is one of the fastest planes ever made. It can go over 3 times the speed of sound. And if a missile was ever shot at one of these aircraft, all you did is you hit full throttle because it could outrun missiles. That's how fast this plane was. And Harry flew this plane. Absolutely incredible. And apparently his cover was he worked for the Litton Corporation, and he would travel all around the world in this plane. Absolutely incredible. And you'd look at him and you'd think, he looks like my Uncle Myron, who's a farmer. There's no way that this guy did all of these incredible things, all of these unexpected things. And he also worked with Skunk Works, which was an organization with Lockheed airplanes. And so they're the ones that developed like the F-117 stealth aircraft and the U-2 spy plane and also the A-12 and SR-71 Blackbird. This guy was the most incredible person you had ever met, but he was so humble and so unassuming. And again, you would never expect this guy to do all of these unexpected things. And you can just imagine as kids, we would just sit and listen to these amazing stories that Harry would share. Just an incredible, incredible veteran. Well, today's gospel is about another soldier who does the unexpected. In our gospel lesson that we have for today, we hear about this centurion, this soldier, this Roman soldier, who's occupying the land where Jesus was in Israel. So he was an occupying soldier, but he did all sorts of unexpected things. And the reason they called him centurion is that he was in charge of around 100 soldiers or so. That's where they get that term, centurion. So he would have been kind of a lower level officer in the Roman military. And so he has this house, and he has servants and slaves that are under him. And our gospel lesson for this morning tells us that one of his slaves is sick. And he does the unexpected thing. He works to find healing for this person. Now, some of these Roman soldiers were pretty ruthless, and so this was not an expected thing for him to do, to take compassion for this slave. And so he looks to find healing for his slave. And to do that, he does another very unexpected thing. He brings together a Jewish delegation, which would have been his enemies. He brings them together, and he sends them out to find Jesus, to help this man find healing. Now, Jesus would have been considered sort of a rabble-rouser by the Romans, so that's a really unexpected thing, that he would have sent them, this Jewish delegation, to find Jesus. You think that he would be working to avoid Jesus, not to engage him. So the gospel says this delegation was sent out to Jesus, and they do an unexpected thing as well. They're pleading with Jesus and saying, come, this centurion is a really good person. He's built a synagogue, and he's helping to find healing for one of his slaves. They vouch for him. So that's kind of an unexpected thing. They're vouching for this group of people that's oppressing them. And so Jesus is curious, and so he starts to make his way back to the centurion's house. And as they're walking to the centurion's house, the centurion does another unexpected thing. He sends a delegation of friends, and he says to Jesus that, I'm not worthy for you to come into my house. Just speak a word of healing. Speak a word of healing from a distance. So talk about unexpected. This centurion believes that Jesus is so incredibly powerful that all he needs to do is to speak a word of healing from a distance, and his slave will be healed. And so that's what Jesus does. Jesus speaks a word of healing, and when they go back, they find that the slave is healed. So Jesus also does an unexpected thing as well. He heals this person, heals the slave of the enemy. And then he does another really expected thing. Jesus is amazed by this centurion's faith, by this man that isn't even technically a follower of him. He is amazed by his faith. Then Jesus says, I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith. He's so incredibly amazed. So the unexpected is happening all over in our gospel story that we have for this morning. And I think about the unexpected that my friend Harry did in the military, who has passed on maybe some years ago. And today's gospel illustrates how God shows up in the unexpected people and places of life. The centurion did the unexpected, those Jewish elders did the unexpected, and Jesus did the unexpected. God showing up in unexpected things and people seems to be God's modus operandi. Just take a look at the Bible. God does the unexpected all over the place. God shows up to Abraham in his old age, to Sarah when she becomes pregnant as an old woman, to Daniel in the lion's den, to King David when his child dies, to Zacchaeus in a tree, and I absolutely love that story of Zacchaeus, to Onesimus, I love that name by the way, in a letter, to Moses in a shrub, and the list goes on and on. God shows up in the unexpected. God also tends to choose the least qualified to do God's work. Take a look at Paul. Paul was a persecutor of Christians, and then God used Paul to become one of the greatest evangelists of all time. It doesn't really make sense. God chose an enemy of the early Christians to do the work of telling others about Jesus. That just doesn't make sense. The world, it seems, looks for the most qualified person for a job. God seems to do the opposite and looks for the one who is least qualified, or perhaps the most unexpected. Also, take a look at the disciples. They were just a ragtag group of men that did not have any special qualifications to be the early leaders of the church. Then you have the way that God came into the world through Jesus Christ. Now, you would think that the creator of the universe, the creator of the planets, would make a glorious entrance into the world he created. But instead, God was born in a barn as a little baby. You would also think that the Son of God would have brought salvation into the world with great power and force. But instead, that Son of God suffered and died on a cross and was raised to new life on the third day. God works through the unexpected. God works through unexpected means and through unexpected people. This is what our gospel lesson teaches us for this morning. God showing up in the unexpected. This is balm for my soul and is good news. Maybe there are some of you that are experiencing the unexpected right now at this very moment. Maybe it is something unexpected with your health, with your career, or with your family. Maybe that unexpected thing is a good thing, but maybe it's a not so good thing. Maybe that unexpected event is bringing you heartache. But here is the good news in the midst of it. God shows up in the unexpected. God shows up in those dark places of life. God works to redeem and bring new life in the most painful of situations. God can bring healing to our lives. And the way that God brings healing to our lives is not always the way that we expect, right? Sometimes healing comes in unexpected ways, like how Jesus gave a word of healing from a distance for that slave who was sick. So this week, pay attention. Pay attention to the unexpected in your life. Pay attention to where you are experiencing pain and heartache. And guess what? In the midst of those unexpected events in life and in those painful places of life, Jesus is showing up. Jesus is showing up to soothe your soul and bring you healing. Jesus may also bring that healing in unexpected ways. Healing may come from someone who is different from you. Healing may come from doing the last thing in the world that you want to do. Healing often comes in unexpected ways and from the people that you would least expect. And know this. Know that God is always at work in your life. God never gives up on you and on his work to bring new life out of death. God shows up in the unexpected people and places of life. This is good news. Amen.